Peace everyone, Unmask Art here. Welcome back to the colored pencil tutorial. Today we're going to be working on the frog of this project. The plan is actually to finish the frog today, so that's going to be the goal. I have some new colors to share with you, so I'm going to go through the colors really quick. I got a few of them, so let's go ahead and do that. I have black and white, so I'm not going to bother showing you those colors. I always have black and white. I have these colors here. This is 118, 1012, 937, and 1002. That's the first batch of colors I'm going to be working with. The next set is the greens. I have 109, 1005, 989. Next batch is the browns, and I have 1085, 1092, and 947. And then the last batch of color is the blue, and that is the 904 and 901. So there's the batches of color that I'm going to be working in. I have them laid out in batches for a reason that I'm about to explain. Obviously the frog is very colorful. It has green, it has blue, it has orange, has a little bit of yellow. It also has some browns and some tan gray colors. So there's a lot of different color parts of the frog, and that's why you have to sort of expand your color palette beyond what I normally recommend. Generally, with just about any project that we ever do in the art club, I always talk about minimizing your starting color palette, maximizing your colors. Well, there's obvious exceptions to the amount of colors that you need to start with because, well, sometimes you get an object like this that has these very distinct colors where it's a series of greens, a series of oranges, a series of blues, and a series of browns. Obviously, minimizing your color palette in an object like this is not very practical, so you have to expand your color palette. So you always have to be prepared to adapt based off of what you're creating. Anyways, let's just get right into it. I'm actually going to start with black. I'm going to be starting in the eye, and I'm going to be doing like the pupil of the frog. I'm just going to begin filling this in. As usual, if you have any questions for me, don't hesitate to ask. I love questions. I never get enough of them. Hey there, Claire, Susan, Diane, Cece, Kizzy, Chrissy, good to see you as well. You know, I was just thinking about you. No joke. I was just thinking, just before I was gonna hit the go live button in OBS, I was wondering, oh, I haven't seen Chrissy in a while. Hope she's doing well. I'd love to see her in the stream sometime. So yeah, I hope you're doing well, Chrissy. Very very happy to see you. I feel like our schedules are just so different right now. I never get to catch any of your live streams. How are things going? Oh, hey there, Stephanie. Good to see you as well. I am doing very well. I appreciate that. Yeah, I hope you're doing good too. We've been having magnificent weather here in Poland. All right, I'm going to set the black aside and I'm going to grab the brightest orange color. Now, I decided to go with this 1002 for my brightest orange. However, I was strongly considering the 1036. If you look at the 1036 in Prismacolor, it's that neon orange, and I did strongly consider it, but eventually, as I was looking at the reference photo, I sort of feel like maybe the photographer of this photo bumped up those oranges perhaps just a little bit too high. Um, so I'm going to go with something that I feel is just a bit more natural, and that's the 1002. And I'm going to work around the highlights because of course this is colored pencils and we don't have the benefit of being able to apply highlights on top without adding more products, which I try to avoid. Hey there, Cherry. I will. Anna has been doing very well also. She she's been going to the gym with me regularly. Actually, we're going to be going to the gym today. So she's been doing really well. She's been progressing in the gym quite nicely. Myself included, I've been progressing very well. I mean, I go 6 days a week, so my progression's a little bit faster than my wife, but it's nice to get her in there and spend some time together doing something, exercising. I Neither one of us are gym people. Like I don't like to go to the gym. Um but it's nice to go with somebody like your wife or your spouse or your significant other and just have that time together, encourage one another, all of that. You forgot what time it was you were working on the jug. Well, that's good. I'm glad to hear you're putting in some work on that. All right, I'm going to switch the orange. This is the 10 or this is the 118. This is just a slightly darker orange for the sake of creating that spherical shape of the eye. Very important color. This will almost immediately create that round round shape, round form of the eye. Let's see, I'll put a little bit over here. There's not a lot of the left eye showing, so it's just like a little triangle of orange. Oh, you do water aerobics? Yeah, that sounds fun. I haven't gone swimming in a really, really long time. I'm going to be going swimming at the end of the month, though. I'm going to be doing my first cold water exposure. Well, technically it's my second, but I'm going to go over to one of the lakes that's nearby and go swimming in the freezing cold water. I'm hoping that it's like 4 degrees or less than 4 degrees. Um, the next color is the 937. This is the darker red for the eye to really get some of that shape, get some of that depth in the curve, the form. So I'm not going to use too much of this, but I just want to get that eye nice and round. Just so right around the edge here, as you can see. And that creates that spherical look. I'll also do a little bit on this other eye. And I'm going to switch back to the 1002 just to smooth out the eye. And that pretty much does it for the eye. You can make a few small adjustments to the shape of the highlight that will help make that eye look a little bit more glassy and realistic. So just touching up the edges here, making the little marks. Sometimes they're just real small, but they make a big difference. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is get to work on the fingers, little fingers. And I'm gonna start with the 1002 and I'm gonna outline everything that is orange. Just a faint outline just so that I have it. So all the little fingers I'll work on and get these little digits separated. I know they're probably not called fingers. I think they're called pads or something. I don't know. I'm not a zoologist. We've had this conversation before. I don't know a whole lot about animals. So all of this is orange. This is actually the back left foot over here, if you were wondering. And then this part, no, that's green. This finger here. And then also what you want to try to do is dodge the white highlights. So treat the white highlight as a separate part of the toes and stuff, and instead leave those areas blank. You want to leave those areas blank. I should have mentioned that earlier, but just try to leave gaps for those white highlights because they are tough on these smaller objects. Those little white highlights are far more difficult to work around, and it would make your life tremendously easier if you had the titanium white and touch up texture. But I'm not making that something. I'm going to try to do this whole thing without it. And there's a few tricks that you can use, such as the spoon method for creating white highlights. So I may incorporate the spoon method if I need to. So that's everything that's orange here. And then he has his back foot here, sort of like this. Here's the other toe, and then the last little toe right here. And then it comes down blue here, something like this. And then that's blue. So there's not a whole lot going on there. Now that those little parts of the orange are outlined, we sort of have that silhouette. I'm going to start with the dark shapes first, so I'm going to actually use the 937. Oh, is that so, Chrissy? Yeah, Cherry's very dedicated. I wouldn't be able to keep up. So I'm using the 937. I'm focused on the dark shapes inside the silhouette. So I'm going to map this stuff out. This and this, there's a tendency, and that tendency is to make things look like how we think they look as opposed to how they actually look. This is a very common mistake that people make in paws when whether it's a cat or a dog or something like that. We have a tendency to exaggerate the features of a paw because we want the paw to look like a paw. And what we end up doing instead is drawing a cartoon paw. So, what you need to do for very intricate shapes and features like feet and even hands on people, and paws on dogs and cats is you need to focus on the most dominant shapes. And those shapes are made up of course, values and colors. And so this here is one of the fingers, and I don't really know exactly how this foot back here is separated because it's kind of blurry and out of focus. But I'm just focused on the most basic, simple shapes that I can. Like in between the two fingers right here, it's sort of just like a squiggly triangle a little bit of a squiggly triangle. And so I'm just going to color in that squiggly triangle that I see. Over here, there's just a little bit of separation of that finger and the other. So I'll just do that. Oh, hey there, Krzysztof. Good to see you. I haven't heard much from you. I thought you might be like super busy or something. See, there's just a little bit there. This foot here is rather bright, so it's mostly the brighter orange. And I'm just going to put in a little bit of separation of some of the fingers where it's just slightly darker. Now this one here is a whole mess. I'm just going to create a little bit of separation, but I'm not really going to put any shapes here because there's not really any shapes to be. There's a few lines of the darker red sort of coming through here, and that's about it. Arguably this little foot here, or this little toe, is kind of dark, so I'm just going to do a really light layer of this red just to distinguish it. And now I'm going to jump back to the 1002, and I'm going to fill in, now that I've used the dark red to sort of establish a few of the lines and the shapes of the feet, I'm going to use this color to color everything in while avoiding, the best of my ability, the small white highlights. I'll just start with this foot here. So I'll just fill in this whole toe. And let's see, most of the highlights back here aren't pure white. It's more of like a translucent thing. So I think that's possible to maybe just add those on top with white. So I'm just going to fill in the entire toe, or the entire foot rather. Now my drawing is rather small, but I'm zoomed in super close, just like yesterday. So I'm going to get as much detail as possible, considering how small my frog is. My frog is actually about life size, so. All right, now I got a little bit of a highlight on the front. Now what's the number one rule for highlights? We talked about this yesterday. So pop quiz question, number one rule of highlights. Just a quick refresher for anybody that may have missed it yesterday. And if you answered it yesterday, try to let somebody else get the answer. Yes, indeed. Always make them bigger than what they appear, because making them smaller is far easier than making them bigger. So I'm leaving quite a bit of space here to modify my future highlights, those gaps there on the toes. Hey there, Victor. Shripad, good to see you as well. Alrighty, I think that's everything that should be filled in. So now I'm going to grab the other orange. This is the 118, and this is going to help me create a bit more depth in my orange. So here, what I'm doing with this color, if when you look at the orange, you can clearly distinct at least two separate oranges. You can definitely see the darker orange versus the lighter orange. And you don't need to be caught up in any of the subtle gradients or anything like that. Instead, what you want to focus on is just creating that separation between the light and the dark orange. So on this little toe here, you can see that the top of the toe is dark, the bottom of the toe is dark. There's this little line of the bright orange, and then there's these subtle highlights. So I'm going to draw in those little subtle highlights, sort of like a little shape like that. And then I'm going to leave that gap where the bright orange separates the bottom and the top toe, or the bottom and the top of the toe. So that little gap right there. And then I'm just going to fill in the rest of the top here, leaving that little highlight the best I can since it's so teeny tiny. So something like that. And now I have something pretty close to what I'm aiming for here with this toe. And I'll just make some small adjustments where I feel it's necessary, and I'll do the same thing here, sort of fill in the bottom. I'll leave that little gap there for the bright. There's a nice big highlight right on the front of the toe, followed by a small one. And I'll just keep sort of filling it in. And just do the best I can at separating those values. There's some other colors happening. There's a little bit of red, and I'll reincorporate some of that darker reddish orange that we started with to help give it a little bit more texture, a little bit more depth. But overall, it's pretty simple. It's important to know the step process of doing it, because you can come across objects that have similar properties to this frog's feet, and you'll have sort of a guided way of working through it. All right, let's just keep working with that color and do this foot, or do these feet over here. Hello, Stacy. So I am using only the Prismacolor colored pencils. That's the only pencils that that's the main pencil that I use for all of my projects, with the exception of the 12 pack of polychromos that I'll occasionally do a project with just them. The paper that I'm working on is Stonehenge Vellum 250 GSM. I bought this paper in large sheets, and then I cut them down to 11 by 14 inches in size. I use a lot of different papers for colored pencil projects, and one of the things that I always say about colored pencils is that there is no such thing as the best paper for colored pencils, because there are so many good papers that work really, really well. They just have different results and different feel to them. I always recommend that no matter what paper you see me using, always go out and try as many papers as you can find, because you'll never know when you're going to come across your absolute favorite paper to work on. Unfortunately for me, I found my favorite paper really, really early on, and then they stopped making it. So my favorite paper is no longer in existence, which is very, very sad because I loved it. But there's still plenty of really good papers out there. So if you're struggling to find a paper you love, don't lose hope. There's plenty of really good ones out there. You're very welcome. Oh, there was a off completely off topic, but I just thought I'd share it with you. There was a big car accident right outside my flat. The it didn't appear as though anybody was hurt, fortunately. But the cars were demolished. It was two cars, and it looked like mm, I think one car pulled out in front of another car. Uh, they sort of hit on the front ends a little bit T-bone style, and they were demolished, completely demolished. But there was no ambulance, and everybody was sort of standing outside their car, so it seemed, um, by all appearances, that everybody was fine. But there's a bit of a traffic jam as I took my wife to work this morning, and so when I was driving back, I had to drive past the accident. How many different sets of colored pencils from Faber-Castell to Luminance? Uh, oh, you have many different. Yeah, I switched back to Prisma for the purpose of teaching because Prismacolor is far less expensive and much more widely accessible. Um, by the way, I'm switching to the 937. I'm going to start darkening some of these orange spots a little bit more just to get full range of value, get nice depth. But the polychromos pencils, they were a work in progress for me for a really long time. I didn't like them at all for years actually. And then I came across an artist that showed a different method of using them by dry blending, and it really appealed to me because as much as I enjoy working with Prismacolor and blending with solvent and all of that, I much prefer dry blending, sort of like graphite. And so I when I came across the method, I tried it out, and I really enjoyed it. And so it completely changed my opinion on polychromos because for the longest time I just tried to use polychromos the same way I use Prismacolor, and that's just not going to work. They're different pencils, and they do work differently in spite being made of basically the same exact material. But I don't use the polychromos very often for my art club projects because I don't want people to feel like they need to go out and buy a bunch of art supplies to follow along. But the projects that I do use the polychromos for, I actually just use the 12 pack. So I do all of the polychromos project with just 12 pencils. It's really good exercise to limit yourself to such a small amount of pencils. It forces you to blend because there's no other option. Instead of just going out and buying the whole set, just get the 12 pack and do everything that you can. Now the frog's feet are going to look a little nah, they're not going to look real special right now because there's nothing, they're not attached to anything. So you have to be a little flexible, a little open-minded in regards to the feet. Just using a brush to get rid of the pencil dust. It's a good habit to use a brush to get rid of your pencil dust. You don't want to swipe with your hands because your hands are greasy. Let's see here. I think that does it for the orange. I'm going to use a touch of white on the feet. So I'm just going to use some white to try to bring out some of those highlights a little bit more. Now, the thing that I don't want anybody to get caught up on, if you're using white paper, I know at least Diane, you're not using white paper for this project. But if you're using white paper like me, the highlights the highlights on the eye, the highlights on the little fingers here, they are not going to look very highlight like because it's surrounded still by the white paper. So be patient in that regard because you don't want, don't overwork it just for the sake of trying to get those highlights to like look better or whatever. Because one, we fill in the beetle. The beetle is essentially just pure black with some shades of like blue and purple. So when we get everything around the feet and the frog in general colored in, those highlights will stand out a lot better. Okie dokie. Yeah, Bristol Smooth is also quite nice paper. Yeah, dry blending with a stump, with a paper stump. That's what I'm referring to. Hello, Glacy. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. Yeah, they're just called blending stumps. They don't have a. Some people mistake them for tortillions, but tortillions are hollow, so they're not the same thing. They're also made out of a different material. Blending stumps are usually a cotton, where tortillions, I'm not sure what tortillions are made out of. They might still be made out of cotton paper, but I think they also come in like different materials. All right, I'm going to be using the greens now. So this is the 109, 989, 1005, and 1012. Basically the same process as the feet. Do a little bit of outlining to save the line art. I'm going to start with the dark green, the 109, and I'm going to be doing the dark shapes. So the creases and the little folds in the frog's skin. I'm going to be putting this in very lightly and then basically filling in everything around the green in order to get a good base color. Um, let's see here. This is a little bit trickier because the frog has a tremendous amount of texture, as you can see in the reference. And so you're going to want to work this process rather slowly. Let's see, his nostrils like right here. And then his mouth. So there's this, a little bit of a fold right here. That's about it. Oh, thank you, Cece, so much for the super chat. Yeah, there's just a few little spots here. So I'm going to use I'm going to use the yellow first. So this is the 1012. His bottom lip is primarily yellow. And then it switches to blue, but I'm going to ignore the blue. So I'm going to just sort of create a little line there. If I happen to miss anybody's question, feel free to ask it again. I do my best not to miss anything, but which was my first favorite paper? Okay, I see that question. My first favorite paper was the Stonehenge vellum, but it's I think it's 250 GSM. I only have one piece of it left. I have one piece left. It came in blocks. So it was sold in blocks, and the cover has a bunch of colored pencils on it. So it's like a blue cover, it's Stonehenge vellum. If you Google image search, you'll still be able to find the cover, but it's like blue and it has like a bunch of colored pencils on the front, and it's just a Stonehenge vellum paper. They still sell, like Stonehenge still makes paper, and they still sell um, vellum, but they do not sell it, at least not from what I've been able to find, uh, in those glued blocks. And I'm using Stonehenge vellum right now. Um, it is not the same paper. I I've I can tell. I can tell it's not the same paper. And I don't know why they stopped making it or whatever. There's a paper that I thought replaced it, is because when I search for the paper, the I always get Legion paper instead. So when I Google search the Stonehenge vellum paper that's in the 11 by 14 gummed pad, I can only find Legion for whatever reason, and I bought some of it thinking that, oh, maybe this Legion paper bought that kind of paper out and they just repackaged it. No, it's not the same paper. I have not been able to find the same paper. I've looked for 2 years now, and I can't get it. I can't find it anywhere. So this back leg here is a little bit more yellow than green, so I'm going to just fill that in. This line here is the highlight, sort of a break in the highlight. So I'm just going to ignore that for now. And this leg here has a lot of yellow on the left side of it, so I'm going to sort of outline it with this yellow. It just goes up halfway here, so not too far. And then also the inside is actually blue, so I'm going to ignore that part, and I'm just going to scribble in a little bit of yellow here where it's yellow. Simple as that. This is yellow, that's good. This comes up a little bit, and this is a little bit yellow, but it's more yellow gray. And that's about all the yellow for now. So what I'll do next is the base. Did I happen to miss any other questions? Hopefully not. Feel free to ask me the question again if I did. But all right, the next color is the 989. This is the lightest green. So essentially this is going to be the base layer. So I'm going to work around the highlight. I'm going to keep the highlight sort of smooth for now. And then after I get the frog relatively colored in, I'll come back through and start adding the texture that separates the highlight. And by adding that texture, that's going to create the illusion of the bumpy skin. But for now, the frog is going to look like it has really smooth skin, because I'm just going to fill it all in with this green. A little bit of a highlight right here. There's like this circular highlight right in here, so I'll avoid those areas. The top of the eyelid is all in a highlight, so I will also avoid the top of the eyelid. So it comes around like this. Sounds like they're doing some construction stuff upstairs. Hopefully they don't start hammering things into the wall or drilling or whatever. They've been making quite a bit of noise all morning. Oh, okay, Susan. Well, I can relate to that. I actually had a doctor's appointment this morning for my back, and I have like two more appointments that I have to go to sometime. I don't even know. Not today, like in next week or at the end of the week or something. Doctor still doesn't know why my back hurts. Just a bunch of speculation at this point. All right, this little fold here, this is the back, like the elbow, and that part is white from a highlight, and then it transitions into blue. So you just want to stop right there, come down to about there, leave that nice gap for the white. Now this is just the light green, so you might be thinking that this green doesn't look like the green of the frog, and you would be absolutely correct because this isn't the green of the frog. This is the light green of the frog. This is like the highlighted part of the green, so it's really, really light. And I think maybe just a little bit up here on that eyelid. Starting to look like a frog. How do I find Polish healthcare as compared to the US? I don't consider the US to even have healthcare. Polish healthcare is amazing. Um, in comparison to the US, like, there is no comparison. There is no comparison whatsoever. When you're like, I didn't grow up what I would consider financially stable. And the idea of going to the doctor or going to the hospital was a complete foreign concept to me because it costs way more than you can afford. You if you're sick, you deal with it and you work through it by yourself. Um, the only time when I was younger that I went to the hospital, um, one second, I'm going to, if I can, I'm going to switch to the slightly darker green. This is the 1005. So I'm going to start creating a little bit of shape to the frog. This still isn't like the darkest green. Um, and I will start working on creating a bit of form, but not using this color 100%. Just sort of darkening some areas of the green. Anyways, so the only time I went to the doctor when I was a kid, I was quite literally at the risk of dying because I had pneumonia. And I was in the hospital for about 2 weeks when I was in the fourth grade for pneumonia. Uh, and there was no option not to take me to the hospital, and I don't have any idea how much that whole shenanigans cost. So um, even as a kid, I was aware of that. Even as a kid, I was aware of the substantial cost of, if I break my arm, this is going to probably get us evicted because my dad's not going to be able to pay rent, kind of thing. So I was aware even as young as like 8 or 9, which I don't think is something an 8 or 9 year old uh, should be very aware of. It's okay to be aware of it, but not as a necessity. It's always okay to be aware of things, but not as a necessity of life. And so that's my childhood experience with the American medical system. Overall, I'd put it essentially obsolete. Um, And when I was in high school, no, when I was in middle school, I was probably about 14 or 15 years old. I dislocated my left shoulder, and I did not go to the hospital. It's still not in where it's not correct to this day because um, you can sort of carry on with a dislocated shoulder and your body will just adapt, and that's what my body did. Of course, it still causes me pain every once in a while, but it's rather rare. But um, didn't go to the hospital for that. My sister Cece, she's in chat. She broke her wrist. I think it was her left wrist. Can't remember if it was your left or your right, Cece. Um, I'm thinking it was your right wrist because I recall you using your left hand to do stuff. But I think it was a full 2 days maybe before Cece went to the hospital. And it was just because the pain was just so unbearably bad, and there was just no way that it wasn't broken. It was it just had to have her wrist had to be broken. Like so, she had to get casted up and stuff like that. Again, I don't really know what that cost, but like what is medical insurance in the United States? It's basically dumb. It's actually dumb because you can pay a tremendous amount for health insurance from whatever private company or whatnot, and what do you get with every insurance coverage? You get a deductible. So they're like, oh well, you break your arm, well it's going to cost $8,000, but you only have to pay $2,000 of it. It's like, well, that's still $2,000. Like you should be able to get an insurance that is just an insurance. It's ridiculous. I have insurance here in Poland. I have health insurance here because my wife is Polish and she works. And it is the requirement of every business to cover the insurance for their employees. Every single business. You work at McDonald's, guess what? You have health insurance. You work at a hot dog stand, guess what? You have insurance. You work at a kiosk that sells cell phones in the mall, you have health insurance. And um, I had surgery on my back a couple years ago. Not a dime. I went to the doctor and I was like, hey, I got this thing on my back. It hurts real bad. And they checked it out and they're like, yeah, you're going to need surgery for this. And 2 weeks later, I was on the operating table. 3 days later, I was out of the hospital. 2 weeks later, I was recovered and and I never paid anything for it. Um, the only payment that you have is you are a contributing member to society in the fact that you have a job or that you're married to somebody that has a job. So it's it's not even a remote comparison. And this was my first this was my first experience with this kind of healthcare system, and that's why I say the United States doesn't even have healthcare because they don't care whether their citizens live or die because 90% of people can't even afford it. It's a joke. Most developed country in the world is the yeah, I don't believe it. I don't believe it. I used to believe it, but I don't believe it anymore. I've been to many countries in my lifetime, and of the most developed, I wouldn't consider the U.S. to be one of them. Not to not to turn this project into anything political or anything. It's just you know I family members that struggle with healthcare and stuff like that. If you're in the U.S., then you know exactly how touchy that subject can be, and it's not a political thing; it's a moral thing. So it's nothing to do with it. It's the fact that people bring politics into it that make it so bad when it shouldn't be. If so many other countries can figure it out in a much better way, then surely there's enough people in the United States to figure it out. I'm still using the same color, by the way. I'm just making small adjustments while I discuss my position on that question. Alrighty. Oh yeah, yeah. No doubt the founding fathers would be disgusted with the current system, the current operating system. Okay, so the next color I'm going to use is the dark green. This is the 109. I'm going to come back through and start defining the creases, like here in the mouth, a little bit better, and start putting in a little bit of the texture. So a little bit of texture, and there's a lot of dots. There's a ton of dots. That's the general texture of the frog. However, it is the dots are the light color. So the dots you cannot put in with the dark color because the dots are light. And so what I'm going to do is essentially I'm going to create. If you look at the dot, the dark color is actually a circle around it, and you can go through and you can create these circles. But if you do it too much, too obviously, it will sort of just look like a grouping of circles. So you can use a few circles to get your scale of the size of the dot that you need. But for the most part, you're going to be using very short, like crescents. But I'm gonna not do it right now. I'm going to use this to just darken some of the shadows first. So I'm still just keeping things smooth. And then when I get the values and the form a bit better on the frog, that's when I'm going to begin the actual texturing process. For now, I just want to darken some things, like these creases here and this crease right here, and just darken some of this edge. Oh, thank you, Michelle. It's nice to see some new faces in chat. I really appreciate you guys coming by the stream. If you are new in chat, feel free to introduce yourself to everyone, all the regulars, and then of course, if you have any questions for me, uh, start asking. I love questions, and I never get enough of them. And I always say that. I think I say that every stream 2 or 3 times. I love answering questions. All right, that's a pretty good base. I'm going to do some of the folds. So if you see, like right here, there's a few little folds. So this is getting into the texture a bit, so I'm just going to add a few lines there. I added a couple over here on that side too. So just a couple little folds. I'm going to use a touch of black, a touch, okay? Just right here on this really deep crease. I'm just not getting the depth that I want from the dark green. So just a little bit of black goes a long way, opening up that part of the skin a little. And I'll also do it just right here where the arm is separate. So just wrap this around sort of like that. And maybe a little bit on the mouth just to deepen that crease a bit. Just right there in the corner. That's going to make that part feel a little bit wider. Oh, that's really cool, Michelle. When did I realize in life you want to be an artist? Actually, never. it was it was never. So since you're new here, you don't know my story, but I've been drawing and doing artwork since I was 6 years old. But it's always been a hobby. It's never been like, oh, I want to be an artist. Um, when I was 6 years old, I wanted to be an astronaut like every other 6 year old, an astronaut or a firefighter. So nothing unique there. It was just that I enjoyed drawing as a kid, and it stuck with me. It's something that I just always enjoyed doing growing up, and I did a lot of it in school. After I graduated from school, I joined the military, and of course, in some of my spare time in the military, I did draw a little bit, but not too much. I didn't do actually very much drawing. Um, but when I got out of the military, I immediately went to college, and my plan, well, initially my plan was to be a psychologist. And so I studied psychology for about a year, and then I transitioned to wanting to be a school counselor. So I wanted to get my degree in psychology to be a school counselor. And then I didn't really like the process. So I knew I wanted to teach. Like I really enjoy teaching. So I focused on my favorite subject, which was math. And so I ended up going to school and getting my bachelor's in math to be a high school math teacher because that was my main goal. While I was in college, though, I never oil painted until 2012, and so I took an oil painting class because I was like, oh, I needed electives anyway. Anybody that's went to college knows you have to take some humanities, and so I took an oil painting class, really really enjoyed it, and I ended up the teacher liked me so much that she let me maintain studio space at the school, which is usually something you have to pay for, but she liked my artwork so much that she just gave me a space for free. And so for the time that I was in college and even a little bit of university before I moved, I had continuous studio space there. Well, at the same time, I came across YouTube uh, channels that created time lapses of drawings, like colored pencil drawings and paintings and stuff. And so in 2013 is when I started my YouTube channel, and it was just as a hobby. I wanted to make time lapse videos. Real quick, I'll continue with the story, but I'm going to go back to the 109 and I'm going to start texturing the skin with the little circles and the half circles. You want to do this texturing really slowly because you don't want the dots to be super obvious. So I'm going to just do that very, very small half circles and just sort of start bringing in the texture of the frog skin. Anyways, so that's what I did. I started learning how to edit video, and I bought some different cameras and stuff and just started making YouTube videos as a hobby because It seemed like something fun. Yeah, I get into a lot of things. The more you hang around, the longer you've been here, then you'll know that I like to just try a little bit of everything. And I've done everything from coding in Python to sculpting in Blender to creating video games in Unreal Engine 5. So I've done a lot of various different things. I've also gotten into chess a lot too. So, um, anyways, it was just a hobby while I was in university. After I graduated is when I moved to Poland because my wife is Polish and I met her in university. And yeah, you can follow that love story if you go through my YouTube channel. But, um, anyways, she actually met me. We met through my YouTube channel. Uh, and so that's how I met my wife. And when I moved to Poland, initially it was just going to be until I returned to school to complete my master's program. However, when I applied for my master's program, they didn't accept me. And they only accept students once a year. So I decided to just take a year off and spend my time in Poland. And while I was in Poland, all I did was YouTube stuff. I just made videos on YouTube. And I decided, I'll just try to make some money doing YouTube because I didn't need to have a job or anything living in Poland with my girlfriend. She was just my girlfriend at the time, but um, so that's what I did. After a year of doing that, I was comfortably making money through YouTube AdSense and a little bit on Patreon. And so I decided, you know what, I'm going to do this for one more year. So I'll postpone going back to school and I'll do this for another year and go from there. And I've been doing it for 7 years now, or 7 years full time, and it's just what I do. And my channel has evolved a lot through the years. Now I have my own website and I have the art club that has all of my lessons and everything that I teach. And my goal was always to become a teacher, but I didn't choose to do art. I always just enjoyed art and I love to teach. And so YouTube just gave me an avenue to not have to worry about being hired somewhere. And I don't need to update my certificate or any of that nonsense. I can just turn my camera on, say hello to everybody, draw some really fun projects and tell you how I do it, the thought process and all of that. And now this is what I do. This is just um, how I make my living. And uh, you know, I can only do this with the help of all of the lovely people that have supported me over the years, and many of them are in chat right now. Um, and I couldn't be more grateful. I get to do this every day and just sort of meet people all around the world like yourself and have great conversations and a lot of fun. I mean, it's just it just sort of happened. I did put a lot of work into my YouTube channel when I did start committing myself to doing it full time, but even at that extent, it was still just mostly fun. Um, would I ever use blue indigo instead of black? No, because if the color requires black, I'm just going to use black. There's a lot of there's a lot of people that a lot of artists, educators that talk about never using black and all that kind of stuff. Um, I think it's nonsense. You can mix some colors to get like a really dark color or whatever, but it's why like it's just easier to use black. I would never avoid the use of black for the sake of avoiding black. I don't think there's any necessity in that. And I don't think it makes artwork inherently better by avoiding what I consider one of the most important colors in any artwork. Black is black is so important for creating and maximizing contrast that I would never actively avoid it or try to avoid it. And I think that the there's quite a bit of educators, art educators, that do um, propagate the idea of avoiding black, and I think they're just wrong. I think it's a bad idea to teach it as an idea because black exists. It's a real thing. Just turn the lights off, and you will see how real black is. So I don't think it's something that I would do for the sake of avoiding black in any way. But that's a good question. As you can see, there's not a whole lot to creating the texture. Just a few dots and a few dashes, dots and dashes, a little crescents, circles to create some bumps, and then of course I bring those bumps into the highlight, into the rim light there, in order to create that texture more obviously. Oh no, I would never laugh at somebody for the way that they discover art. We all discover it in our own way. I think that's a fun story. Um, when I was in first grade, we had art class. That's how I discovered art, and I never stopped. I never stopped drawing. I never stopped coloring. There was, I think, maybe 6 months at some point in my life where I did absolutely nothing artistic while I was in the military, a maximum of about 6 months. And it was probably like the worst 6 months of my life. Because for me, art's always different for everyone. But for me, it's always been the way that I journalize my life. Some people write with words. I write with the experience. So emotionally, this frog doesn't represent anything in my life. But what is going on in my life right now, I will remember when I look back at this picture in 10, 15 years. And that's the way all of my artwork really is. A majority of it is. Uh, when I was back in the United States, I went through a little bit of my artwork with my sister Cece, and I was telling her when I did the artwork, I'd pull up a picture and I talk about like what I was doing, what I was thinking, or what grade I was in. And it's a lot like the nostalgia you get when you watch an old movie or you hear a song you haven't heard in 15 years or something like that. My artwork does that for me, and that's the way I've journalized my life. I don't I don't always tell a lot of complex stories in my artwork. Rarely ever do I tell any stories whatsoever. But when I look at it, I am taken back to a certain stage of my life that I can reminisce on or remember. And so that's what art has always done for me, and that's why I sort of enjoy doing it continuously, because it sort of allows me to connect back on things that I would otherwise forget, parts of my life and things that happen and all of that. And just ask my wife. I'm terrible at remembering just about anything. So art gives me that small ability to sort of compartmentalize or chapterize my life when I go back and look at it. Oh, that's funny. Yeah, that is a funny way of getting into art. Did you say how old you were when you're probably rather young if you wanted to eat the crayon. If your first thought was to eat the crayon, so you've been drawing for a long time, uh, being 48. But that's really cool. That's a fun story to tell. I don't have anything distinct like that. It was just a constant evolution, I guess, sort of just stemming from my experience in first grade, and most people know my second grade story. Just about everybody knows the mermaid story, the 3D the 3D mermaid story. I've told that one a number of times. That's my probably my most infamous art story in second grade. I wish I had the artwork from first and second grade. I really do. My family moved around way too much. Okie dokie. The green the green is officially done. Plenty of texture. Now I'm going to go let's see. Now I'm going to go to the blues real quick. So now you're really zoomed in, and you can see, I don't know, what you may consider imperfections on my frog, but I can assure you, my face is pretty close to the paper, and it doesn't look like that. Okay. So again, you're looking at it under a microscope. Here's my thumb. Okay, that's my thumb. This frog is not very big. I'm going to use the 904, and I'm going to map out some of the blue, just like I do with all the other colors. So I'm just going to map out some of the blue here that exists on the bottom of the frog and on the arms and whatnot. And I'll just loosely fill that in. There's like maybe a touch of blue, like right over here. It's not very blue, but it's kind of blue. And then there's this here, this gap, a little bit of blue there, blue on the bottom part of this leg here. And then this is very blue, the belly or whatnot. But it's also very dark and like blue black kind of thing. And then you have the highlight on this part of the leg, and then also the highlight here on the back. So something like that. So I'll just fill this in quickly. And I'm just doing a light layer with this light blue, just to get it started. No need to overdo it right away. I'm going to leave a little bit of white here for a nice highlight on the foot. And then add some nice blue up the leg. Yeah, that's pretty good. A little bit more blue on this leg here. All right, now I'll just start filling this in a little bit more densely. Something like that. I think what I'll do is I'll actually do the grays or the gray and browns along with the black. So, or along with the blue, I mean. Just gonna grab all the colors here. Do I ever use a blending pencil? I used to, but I don't anymore. The only blending pencil that I've ever recommended is the Caran d'Ache colorless blender. That colorless blender is really, really amazing, but I just don't use it anymore. I just don't have a need to use it. Do I critique artwork? Yes, actually, that's a really good question. I critique artwork the first Friday of every month. All right, so the colors that I have here are the browns that I introduced at the beginning. So the 1085, 1092, the 947, the 901, the 904, and then I have black and white there. So I'm going to use the 1092 to map out the darker browns. And by browns, I'm sort of using that in a general sense because these colors aren't really brown. They're sort of like a mix between brown and gray and a little bit of clay rose kind of color. So there are varying degrees of color, but I'm looking for sort of the shapes that happen here. So you have like the frog's like neck kind of thing going on, and you have those whiter areas. They sort of appear almost white, like the frog's belly is white, but in actuality it's very gray. So don't make it white because it's not white. But anyways, just going to fill this in very, very loosely. And this is rather pale here and here. Yeah, and then the rest of it I can fill in. Oh, that back leg there and that arm there is also gray. I mean blue. It's blue, not gray. My words, they're getting all tangled up. I guess I've been streaming too long. Yeah, I mean, you'll have to wait for the next month's live critique, but I would love to see your frog. Yeah. Diane, if you don't mind sharing the links um, to like the Discord and the Facebook group um, in chat, then you can join the Facebook group and the Discord. If you want to share your frog in on either of those platforms, you can get some input from the family members. But I do the live critiques, like I said, the first Friday of every month. So you have to wait till I don't know what you have to wait a couple weeks for the live critique. But if you want to see the format, just check out some of my other live streams that I've done, and you'll see the live critiques. I like I said, I do the live critiques the first Friday of every month, um, with the exception of last month because I wasn't here in Poland. All right, so that's the shape I'm looking for. This part here, this space here is going to be the beetle, so I'm not gonna do anything there. Now I'm going to use the 1085 to fill in everything else. Now there's a pretty bright highlight right underneath the chin, so I'm going to avoid that spot. But otherwise, just going to sort of fill in the rest of the frog. Again, there's a little highlight there, so I'll avoid that. But all of this, I can just fill it in rather quickly. Pretty basic. Just like that. Yeah, it's pretty close. Appreciate everybody coming by. It's really nice to see so many new people in chat. So I thank you for the questions. I thank you for your time coming by and saying hello and all of that. I genuinely do appreciate it. Thank you very much, Diane, for sharing those links. Alrighty, let's jump back to the dark blue. Yeah, let's go with the dark blue. This is the 901. And so I'll start darkening up the blue here and creating some of the form. No texture yet, just getting those forms correct, and some of the details, just some of the details, like the crease in the arm and whatnot, but otherwise nothing too extreme. Frog's gonna be coming to life real soon. It's really gonna come to life when I zoom out and you guys can see the frog for what it's supposed to look like and not what it sort of looks like under a microscope. It's always kind of embarrassing when I look up at my screen and I see how zoomed in I am, and I realize that it doesn't look that great. Sorry, I gotta jump through a couple of the blues here because this arm sticking out over here. There's even a little bit of green, so I'll just grab the green really quick. There's just a touch of green on his left forearm there. So, all right, back to the 901. This is all pretty dark here, so I think I can get away with just sort of filling most of it in. Pineapple? Did I miss something? Ariana? For the purple, I'm just going to rely on the mixture of the dark blue and the clay rose kind of color. I think it was the 1085. So all of this here, I'm just going to layer some of the blue, and then I'll use the 1092, sorry, 1092, mixing the blue and this color together to get that sort of purplish underbelly color. And you don't need to add extra colors just because it's like a purple. You can just mix and use the colors that you have and go from there. And I think it looks better that way too. I think it looks more natural using these colors in combination as opposed to grabbing another color. Oh yeah, looking good. All right, now I'm going to do another layer with the 904. Really make the blue nice and bold, because the blue is super bright. Again, it might have been a little bit over-tuned by the original photographer, but it still looks really nice. Sometimes the hypersaturation takes it too far, but I think maybe just the orange, the hypersaturation of the orange may have taken it a little bit too far, but fortunately, as an artist, I can tone that down in my artwork and I don't have to do it exactly. I forgot to color these little areas dark blue. I'll have to come back to that. There we go. Jump back to the 901. Fill this little shape in here and here. You got some of the brush and pencil touch up. You're not sure how to use it? Well, it's actually quite easy. I can describe it to you. So what I do is I actually take a piece of tape. I take a little piece of tape and I put a little bit of that titanium white powder on the tape, and then I use the sort of brush thingy that's in the touch-up texture, and I just dip some of that in there, and I use a little paintbrush to mix it up, and I use it from there. The reason I use a piece of tape is because the powder can get kind of crumbly a little bit, especially after it dries on the tape. And I just fold the sides of the tape up and then toss it in the trash. A lot goes, or a little goes a long way, so you don't need to use a whole lot of the titanium white, and you can reactivate it. So if it dries on the tape, you can just add a little bit more of the touch-up texture and reactivate it. And that's how you use it. You just use it just like paint. Just use it just like paint. It's a really nice product. Yeah, it's good to have. All right, I'm gonna switch gears and jump to the 947. This is the dark brown. I need to get some of these darker tones put in on the underbelly to make the frog look a little bit more natural. And then we can start texturing the belly, which will be rather relatively easy. I'm going to use some black on this back part over here as well. So I got this line. This part back here is a bit darker. Just going to grab a pencil extender. And now I did bring out my solvent because I did anticipate using solvent on the frog. I don't really feel like it's necessary at this point, but I may use it on the belly here for some of these lighter colors. I always feel like it's a bit easier to burnish dark colors than it is to do light colors. There's always a bit of a hesitation when burnishing light colors because dark colors don't change nearly as much as I feel like light colors do when you burnish them. Let's see, I'm going to do a layer of the 1085 here and try to smooth this out, and hopefully I won't really need to consider the use of solvent on the belly, but also tone it slightly blue. That's the thing. Toning. When you tone dark colors, it's really easy to use just about any level of pressure and you get a pretty smooth finish. But when you're toning light colors, if you use just a little bit of pressure, you don't get a smooth finish like you do with dark colors because generally you're toning with a color that's darker than what the surface is, and so you get little lines and stuff, and it's just easier to blend those lines out with solvent rather than another color, because then again you're going to change it. By the way, I'm using the 901 just to add in some blue into the shadows here. Just some overall blue colors. You can also use the uh, pencil blender, the blending stump, with the Prismacolors. So generally I don't use it, but you can also use that to blend out some of the smooth out some of the light colors as well. So that is also an option. All right, a little bit of black in some spots, bring out those really, really contrasted deep areas for the sake of contrast. What's the most important feature in artwork? Pop quiz question. Most important feature. Actually, I'm gonna make a video on this tomorrow. I was trying to think of what I was gonna make a video on tomorrow, and I couldn't remember. It's gonna be it's gonna be the hierarchy of artwork. That's what I'm gonna do. Gosh, this day went by so quickly. Doctor appointments take way too much time. They take way too long. Frog is just about done. The last little thing will be the texture. Let's see, do I have a clean blending stump? Yes, indeed, contrast is the most important thing in your artwork. All right, that should be clean enough. So this is the blending stump that I'm talking about, and I'm not going to press real hard on the frog. I'm just going to use just a regular pressure, you know, nothing more than I would use on a pencil. I'm not trying to damage the paper by jamming this thing in there all hard unnecessarily or anything. It doesn't take a lot of pressure, and you can see it's darkening the tip of the blender, so you know that some of the pigment is spreading at the very least on the blending stump, which it can't bleed onto the blending stump and not make a difference to the paper itself. So, and I think that looks considerably smoother. I'm going to use the dark blue, the 901. And the white. So this is the two colors I'm going to use to make texture. So let's see here. Let's just start back here. There's a little bit of texture. And then for this texture, you're going to create, imagine creating like a series of hexagon shapes. So sort of like short zigzag lines. Does anybody, okay, another pop quiz question. Um, what is the method of creating salt and pepper fur? What would happen if you dipped the blending stumps in odorless mineral spirits? I have no idea actually. I I imagine it would work similar to a paintbrush, but the benefit of a paintbrush is that it's soft, whereas the blending stump is not. And so um, you might end up sliding the pigment off of the paper more than you would a brush, because a paintbrush, if you blend a smooth paper with too much solvent on a paintbrush, you actually just wipe the pigment right off the paper. And I imagine the blending stump will be rather um, worse than that actually. So Kizzy, you're really close. You're really close. You're right with the mountains, but not the scribbles. So it's zigzag mountains. So the way to create salt and pepper fur is zigzag mountains. Well, to create the texture of this, um, the underbelly of the frog is crisscross zigzags. So zigzags that go like this. You're going to zigzag this way and zigzag this way. So it's crisscross. So it's not mountains, it's crisscross. So you can do all your zigzags in one direction. And I'll literally do zigzags just to prove. Some the zigzags will get smaller in some areas, but still zigzags. And now I'm just going to come across them with a zigzag. So that's the only difference between um, salt and pepper fur and this. It's sort of this texture reminds me of is dried out desert mud. It sort of has that cracked kind of texture to it. I don't have a good name for this texture because it's not like scales. It's not scales. It's sort of desert mud cracks or something. That's what zigzag crisscrosses look like. It looks like the texture. I am. I'm going to use a little bit of black because some of that zigzag texture is rather dark right in here. So I'm going to go over some of the zigzags. But I'm only going to do zigzags. No drawing skills are required. If you can zigzag, then you can draw this frog. Okay. You just need to know zigzags. That's it. I'm going to come back over some of the areas with white to bring out the highlights, but I'm going to do the white. I'm going to color inside the little triangular polygon shapes that I created with overlapping my zigzags. So I'm looking for those gaps, and I'm just going to do a little scribble of white to lighten up some of those spots. Smooth out this highlight over here. And continue to sort of fill in some of the zigzags, the gaps in the zigzags. Just something like that. A little bit over here. Okie dokie. That frog is done. Yeah, I'm gonna call that frog done. Let me pause this. I'm gonna zoom out so you guys can see it. Why is this not zooming? There we go. There's my frog. See, it doesn't look that bad. There's my hand for scale, so you can see the scale of it. So the height is just about the length of my hand. But that is going to do it for today. The frog is complete. Next week we're going to work on the beetle. Uh, the beetle is rather large. I cannot guarantee my capability of sitting down and doing the beetle in a single sitting. But at the very least, I did get the frog done in a single sitting, which um, was the plan initially. So I hope that you guys like the frog. Once I get the rest of the stuff filled in, the background will be pushed away even more and it'll look better. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you so much for all the new people that came by to hang out. I hope that you enjoyed the live stream. Uh, the next time I will stream might be Friday. I'm gonna try. I really want to paint on Friday, so I'm gonna. Hopefully, there's no weird things that pop up out of nowhere, but that's the plan to stream on Friday. I'm gonna try to make a video tomorrow as well on the hierarchy of what makes your artwork great. And otherwise, I'll be back for sure on Monday to stream the pastel project. So you guys enjoy the rest of your week, and I hope to see you Friday. Take care. Peace.